Welcome back to Face the Truth. We are studying today about the cross and how it came to be a religious icon and a symbol identified with Christianity. Though the cross is mentioned in the Bible, it was not mentioned as something that one should make and place in their chapels, wear around one's neck, and place in your home. The cross was only made a symbol of Christianity after the time of Christ and the apostles and the first century Christians. And this was done by the Catholic Church. In fact, how should the cross truly be considered according to the Catholic book we read earlier? Let's go back to that book we read earlier, Discourses on the Apostles' Creed by Clement H. Crock. On page 16, this is what we can read. Before the time of Christ, the cross was the symbol of shame, ignorance, and dishonor, like the guillotine, the noose, or the electric chair. It was the instrument for the execution of the worst criminals. The cross was branded upon the forehead of criminals as a symbol of disgrace before the world. Now, what does the cross symbolize? Well, based on what we have read, shame, ignorance, and dishonor. And what kind of people were identified with the cross even before the time of Christ? This book that we have read says the worst criminals. This was branded upon or seared or marked on the foreheads of criminals to disgrace them. Even worse, what was it used for? Not just a symbol of disgrace, but an instrument of execution, like the guillotine, the noose, or even the electric chair. Now, what we are studying today is not to offend anyone, of course. However, we have to tell you the truth. And these things that we are revealing to you today are recorded even in history books for you to examine yourselves. Now, let us put this in perspective for a moment. If it just so happened that Christ was put to death by means of the equivalent instruments of execution, like the electric chair, the guillotine, or noose, for example, it's quite possible that one of these instruments of execution would have transformed into a religious icon today. Could you imagine religious groups placing electric chairs, guillotines, or nooses on their church steeples and their altars? Imagine making gold or silver necklaces shaped out of these things. It may sound absurd, and we couldn't imagine that being done by anyone. Well, it's no different from what people have done with the cross, which during those times was one of the worst forms of execution. That's why it was used to put to death the Lord Jesus Christ. In fact, the apostles mentioned the shame of the cross here in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, and the verse is 2. We must keep our eyes on Jesus, who leads us and makes our faith complete. He endured the shame of being nailed to a cross because he knew that later on he would be glad he did. Now he is seated at the right side of God's throne. And so the literal cross is a symbol of shame, a symbol of disgrace, dishonor, torture, and death. Why would anyone want to use something such as this to honor Christ? And so the truth, it may be painful at first, but whether you accept it or not, whether you believe it or not, the truth is something we all must face. Thanks for joining us on Face the Truth. I am Barry Thompson. Take care and God bless.